Watch. We're good.
I'm going to get you fired the fuck up.
You won't never rattle me.
You're going to get angry in this one.
If 30,000 can rattle me, you ain't.
Here we go. Here we go.
You know, let's start talking about the kids who aren't ever talked about.
Exactly. Welcome to Jersey Mat Chat. This episode is sponsored by Beato Baits, 5-inch stick baits designed by a wrestler, built to win. With a range of color options and a perfect sink rate, these things will get bites when nothing else will. And don't miss the mystery color, made from leftover plastic each week, melted down and molded into one-of-a-kind baits. No two are the same, but they all catch. Perfected for anglers who just want to catch more fish. So, if you're grinding on the mat, take that same energy to the water. Beato Baits, B-E-A-T-O. Tough to beat, easy to fish. Check for the link in the description of this episode, or you can find them on Etsy. All right, today we're here with Vinny Russo and Gary Wade again. Talk a little bit more about stalling. Doug, you want to start us off?
Yeah, the whistle part 2. It's going to get good. I don't think Vinny and Gary need any introduction, but if you're curious as to who they are, just go back to our part 1 of this, and you'll get their backgrounds and their resumes. I don't want to really waste anyone's time, including our wonderful guest. Guys, again, thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, really appreciate
what we do here.
Yeah.
So today we're going to go over a couple of things that are most often controversial and most often misunderstood. We're going to start really digging deeper into stalling.
Mm-hmm.
Who loves stalling, right? Who doesn't love stalling, I should say. So the rule book basically states, without getting word for word, is stalling is this, and we're going to cover what's this, but stalling is this unless you're getting overpowered. So before we get into stalling, I'm going to start with Mr. Gary Wade. Gary, explain to people what being overpowered means.
So overpowered clearly states, like, you're able to look at the scoreboard and understand you're being overpowered. The score's 14-1 or 13-1, and the kid seems to be outdueled by the other. I mean, you would, again, which we talked about in the first episode, you would kind of use your discretion to understand that that guy's probably being overpowered. We don't take records into consideration with that. We don't take whether you're a senior versus a freshman. We don't really care when it comes into that. But if you can clearly see a guy's being overpowered or not. Overpowered, I really don't take into consideration when it comes into tournaments. Overpowered more is kind of like when you're seeing it in like dual meets, major decisions. If it's past not out a major decision, guy can still be getting overpowered. But we'll talk about that when we get into it. Sure. We call that situational stalling, when a guy is stalling not to give up team bonus points.
Okay.
So hopefully I explained
Well,
it.
yeah, when you're in that situation where the defensive guy knows not to give up that 5-point tech fall, he's going to just lay there and do everything he can. And that is not being overpowered at that point. That's the defensive wrestler avoiding a tech fall or a pin. So the referee must recognize that, and at that time you can call stalling on him. The toughest call to make is when it's the semifinals of a regional tournament. People don't realize. They think, oh, he made it to the semis. He can't get overpowered. Yes, he can. There's guys in the state of New Jersey that can outclass anybody, including the state finals. So you can get overpowered in the semis. So you have to be conscious as a referee of what's going on in the match and what that defensive guy is doing to continue to wrestle. That's what I look for.
To avoid a misinterpretation of overpowered, does that mean outclassed?
We can.
When you're outclassed.
Outclassed. So what I'm saying is overpowering and outclassed the same thing?
Yes.
So a 14-year-old freshman, hypothetically, pre-puberty, can outclass an 18-year-old. He's
Sure.
not going to overpower an 18-year-old. Do we agree or disagree?
I disagree.
You
He can overpower the 18-year-old.
Okay.
If he has the skill set, speed, quickness, strength, if he has that skill set at 14 years old, he can overpower anybody.
Well, I mean, let's throw the strength thing out the window, right? Because you can be the strongest wrestler in the world and still get outclassed by an elite technician of a
Correct.
wrestler, right? And you can see that. So I think what you're trying to do is put that word into like how it's written in a dictionary,
Right.
and that's not really the case how you use it when we observe what's going on.
That's why we're talking about.
So if you got a 14-year-old freshman that's going against an 18-year-old senior, he can still outclass him
Yeah.
and overpower him. He still can. It depends on that specific wrestler, right? So, I think as officials, we can recognize what's going on. And that's why when they have that, overpowered in the rule book for high school. Overpowered's not in a rule book when it comes to the NCAA.
Yeah.
That's not
It
in
shouldn't
there.
be.
Yeah.
It should be in high school.
Does any of this change if it's a dual match versus an individual match?
So when you're saying individual, like in a tournament?
Like in a tournament,
So
yeah.
listen, that's when I kind of, prefaced what I was saying with it, because there is situational stalling. All right. Situational stalling would be a guy that's told to go out and not give up bonus points in a dual meet situation, right? In the regional tournament, in the state tournament, the New Jersey does not keep team points, right? So, there's situational stalling in those cases, but not when it comes to a team score and an outpowered or overpowered situation. So, there's different facets to it. Hopefully you and I have spoken about this in the past,
Yeah.
and I know you and I battled with it.
Don't agree.
Yeah, I know you don't agree, but hopefully we're explaining it a little bit more. And I don't know, what your thoughts are.
Well, when I look for overpowering, I look to see if the defensive wrestler is trying to make a move to get out and he is just getting stopped, and every single time he tries to get out, he's getting overpowered and not being able to get to do a switch, to do any kind of defensive move to get out. He can't do it. Then you look for overpowering.
I agree. Well, let's start. The match starts on their feet. And the disagreements, Gary, and I want your opinion, Vin, the discussions I've had with Gary in the past start with this. I say the goal of wrestling is to score points and then pin, because you got to score before you can pin.
The ultimate.
Right. So how can aggression be held against you? So if I'm doing all the risk taking and risking you scoring because I'm trying to score, just because I'm good at what I do and I'm better than you at what I do, how are you protecting him by not hitting him with the stalling and punishing me by not rewarding me stalling?
I think in the first period, you're not going to see many referees not call stalling because he's being overpowered.
Yeah, that's not.
But like what Gary said before, when the score's 14-1 in the second period or the end of the first period, you got to start thinking, this guy, you know what? He has no chance here.
Right.
And that's being overpowered. Not when it's 0-0. I don't think any referee is not going to call stalling because that guy backed out of the circle and you say he got overpowered. Nobody's going to not call that.
Okay.
But when the score is 14-1, 12-1, then you start looking for, is he getting overpowered to the point where he can't do anything against his opponent? Then you take a step back and say, is this stall call warranted when the kid can't do anything? And that's when you consider overpowered.
And a stall call is really supposed to motivate the wrestler to wrestle more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a stall call also is if the other wrestler is outperforming the other wrestler and outworking him, he deserves the stall call, right?
If you saw how many times, excuse me, Gary, if you saw how many times, especially in the higher level wrestling districts, regions, states, how many times when you call a stall warning, how fast that match makes a major turn.
Agreed.
To where the guy you called stalling on, all of a sudden now,
They start wrestling.
is going crazy and scoring points.
That's when when you make a stall call and there's points that come immediately after that, you helped promote wrestling. You helped to promote scoring by making that stall call. And that's what the stall call is used for. To motivate that wrestler. Let's keep it moving. Let's score some points out of it. Like if you hit a bottom guy for stalling because he's refusing to come up off the mat, using the mat as a fulcrum, and all of a sudden you hit the bottom guy, now all of a sudden he decides to open up and he immediately gets turned for near fall points. I know I did my job at that point.
Yeah.
I did my job at that point because points came after the stall call.
Okay, so I appreciate both of your interpretations of a word agreement. Overpowering is equal to outclassing.
You better with this now?
I am. But
And it's really...
we own an agreement.
Yeah.
And it's dictated to where you are in the sequence of that match. Each individual match has its own separate story.
Okay.
And it all becomes a story from the first period to the last. And it's up to the referee to understand and decipher when that guy is stalling and when he's being overpowered.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, sounds good to me. What do you think? Any follow-ups?
No, that makes a lot more sense. I actually think I understand what you guys are talking about now. I'm happy about that.
All right, so now let's dive into...
We're not as dumb as...
Yeah, see that?
You are, right?
You're already educated somebody.
Here.
All right, you bring him
Bring the pain here.
All right, so for 3 weeks, he's been telling us he's getting us tonight.
No, we're going deep. All right, we're going to get into stalling. And where we're going to start off with the... call it a rear standing. Referee's position, they come to their feet. All right, so, Vinny, what is the most common stall call or situation in a rear standing?
Well, not making an attempt. People, they don't know how to decipher from making an attempt. You cannot call the offensive wrestler for stalling for not bringing him to the mat. They don't have to bring him to the mat for the stall call within a 5-second period. All they must do is make an attempt to bring him to the mat. That's a big difference because people are yelling, he's 5 seconds, he didn't bring him to the mat. Has nothing to do with it.
I hate that you said that 5 seconds.
Well, hold on, I got to give him an attaboy.
Yeah.
Now, elaborate on this because what you're saying isn't consistent, but you did make the right call. Now, explain the difference between that, making an attempt, and the Andrew Campolattano Mancuso match.
Do you know who the referee in that match was?
You were. Campolattano was making attempts, but he was making
name dropping again.
He was making the same attempt. So there has to come a time.
No,
where
there isn't. An attempt is an attempt. It could be the same attempt for 100 times.
You hit him, rightfully so, by making
It was more than that. But there was more than that.
Okay.
He was holding on for dear life while making that.
The top man was doing nothing but returning.
And he was...
Exactly.
He could do that, but he was holding off. Mac Mancuso was giving his all, trying to get out.
Yeah.
And Campolattano was using the same, try to bring him back to the mat.
Yeah.
I let him go a couple times.
Right.
But then all of a sudden I said, is he really trying to score points here?
That's
is he trying to return him to the mat or just killing time and trying to hold out until the period ends or, something like that?
So as a referee, Gary, as a referee, you have to decipher the difference between making a legitimate attempt and holding on. Well, use your term, holding on.
But very rarely,
okay.
Just so you know, in a match like that, in a state final, I have to make sure I recognize when I feel in my heart that guy is stalling.
Okay.
You have to have a feel for it.
Yeah.
I throw the rule book away in some situations, especially in the higher quality bouts. You have to feel in your heart when you know that guy is not performing to the best of his ability and he's just trying to hold on to maintain his lead or maintain the higher score. That's what you have to recognize as a referee.
That's exactly when you see a wrestler that's doing nothing but counter wrestling. He's not trying to score points. He's doing nothing but counter wrestling in that situation. And I remember watching that, and we talked about that, and it was 1,000% the right call.
Thank you.
But not a lot of guys called that. Not a lot of guys call because he's able to recognize it.
Yeah, but that comes back down what we just discussed. We just discussed overpowering and being.
No. The state finals, Mac Mancuso was not getting.
I would take that one specific.
He was not getting overpowered
in this situation.
He took if I remember correctly, he took a 4-0 lead on Campolattano in that match. He threw him in a headlock and got a 2 count or a 3 count in the first 10 seconds, 15 seconds of that match.
That's one of the greatest, top 10 matches in New Jersey history when Campolattano was a freshman.
That was a great match.
Mac Mancuso was a senior.
That rivaled Lynch Covington. Yeah. It rivaled
it. It was out of control.
Yeah, it rivaled it.
They couldn't wait for that bout.
It was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you calling.
And then Mancuso gave him all he can handle, I'll tell you that.
So can we stick with the rear standing thing? Because this misnomer of seconds, I'll hear coaches counting.
I know.
1, 2. Well, what are you counting for? Years ago in the book, there was a time span.
Coaches.
Right? I don't think I was an official at that point.
Right.
You were. Was there a time span you needed to return?
Yeah, 5 seconds.
Yeah, okay. So that 5-second thing has been out of the book for at least 17 years.
Yeah, but you still have to go by something.
I get it, but it's an attempt. And then everyone tells me with attempts. Now, there's caveats to this, right? If I'm the offensive wrestler and both of my hands are controlled by the defensive wrestler and we stand up, what do we expect the offensive wrestler to do when he has no hand control?
Cut him. That's it.
Okay, but that's all he can do. But if the guy's holding on, so you'll see a lot of the gaming of it.
And if the score's 2-2 with 30 seconds left,
you'll see a lot of the gaming of it where the defensive wrestler,
that's all he
can do. Right, exactly.
holds the hands and he looks at the official because he's trying to get the stall call.
Yeah,
he's baiting you into the stall call.
Well, that happens a lot.
And I just point to the hands and say, "You have the hands. If you want to get out, get out. If not, then let go of the hands." Right? Because what they'll do is they'll hold on to the hands. A non-informed ref will bang the offensive wrestler.
We're not making his attempt.
They're not making an
but
attempt. Meanwhile, he can't.
He had no
And
opportunity.
then as soon as he gets the stall call, you'll see the defensive wrestler release the hands and then get an escape.
Yes.
So not only does he get the stall call and he gets the escape. So that's when I think a great referee will understand and see that. You know what I mean?
Well, a higher level wrestler is not going to allow anyone to get double hands, but I get what you're saying.
You see it in a lot of cases, man. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Even at the highest elite levels.
I've never seen a kid grab two wrists and just say, "Hey, ref, look at me."
I see it all the time.
That's fair. Let's say it does happen. That's how you handle it. Then what do you have to say about that?
About the
Double hands. Same thing with Gary.
I see it once in a while. It's not a common situation,
Right.
but I do see it once in a while.
When are you ever going to hit the bottom guy? Well, when they come to their feet, the guy not in control. What does he have to do to get hit?
What he has to do is if he runs out of bounds, it's fleeing the mat. That's what I look for the defensive guy. When the offensive guy is trying to attempt to take him down, it's hard to hit the defensive guy there unless he's running out of bounds to avoid wrestling. Then I hit him for fleeing the mat.
I'm going to completely disagree with what you just said.
In what respect?
Because, this is being very respectful. Fleeing the mat, you have to be in a scoring situation. So if they're both standing, who's the only guy that can score in a standing situation?
The guy that's going to score the escape.
Okay, so then why would he ever be hit for fleeing the mat when he's the only guy that can score?
He's avoiding, whatever he's doing, he's avoiding scoring.
Yeah, to me,
he's leaving the mat.
That's not fleeing the mat.
We are going to get into fleeing and automatic stall. We're going to get into that soon, because that's a great topic as well. No, it's great.
No problem at all.
So
no assignments for me next year.
So
you're not going to get a district, that's for sure.
Gary, you better just go build another patio.
For any district.
Where's his ring?
So we'll agree that the most common scenario is rear standing is coaches they think it has to be a successful return and not
just a
legitimate attempt.
It's an attempt.
Keywords attempt.
Okay. And you can make 5 attempts in 5 seconds. You can make 1 attempt in a second. It's attempts.
Do you look for anything like the offensive wrestler's knees bending? Is that a sign of a legitimate attempt? Do you look for our front trips?
Front trips, back trips.
Okay.
That's an attempt.
Yeah.
But what I mean is the effort behind a lift. Unless you're bending your knees, you're not going to lift anyone. Chances are, late in the match, you need your knees, you need your body.
Yep.
Do you look for anything to say he's acting or he's legitimately trying?
Doug, stalling is a feel by the referee.
Mm-hmm. But it's taught to do.
Taught to be recognized, but a feeling to call it.
No, what I mean is wrestlers are taught to stall.
Wrestlers, right.
Right, so they're outsmarting us.
Right. But so are referees.
And that's why we keep reinventing new rules.
Yes.
So because these wrestlers are super smart.
Yes.
They're super smart.
The rule book spends a page and a half on one topic. Stalling.
Mm-hmm.
A page and a half.
It needs 80 pages.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Ain't that the truth?
I know.
I got a general question. Does the score ever come into play when you're calling scoring? I'm going to imagine if it's not to the referee. So if it's a close match and you got to call that.
You're dictating at that point.
Unless, though, it is a situational stall.
Right.
The guy's down by 7 points and he's clearly doesn't want to give up the major. That's situational stalling.
I'm thinking more like it's 0-0. It's 1-0. The guy's on bottom or something along those lines.
A good referee is
Doesn't
not going
matter.
to be a scoreboard watcher.
Right.
When it comes to a warning don't forget, the warning is out there. Coaches get very upset when you call their guy for a warning. Very upset. That's to make their kid wrestle. That's a benefit. If you look at it the opposite way, it's a benefit to the person you're calling stalling on because you're making him aware that the referee does not think he's wrestling to where he should be, to the level he should be.
I think the real answer to that question is it's clearly stated in the book, right? Stalling is to be awarded without hesitation. That's exactly how it's written in the book.
Okay.
So I think that kind of answers where you're
Well,
coming
Pete,
from.
I can tell you this, and they'll likely agree with me. See, when you officiate third period, we're not scoreboard watching, but we're aware. We have to be conscientious. And I think the 4-3 match, 25 seconds left, you warrant a stall call that makes it 4-4 to go into overtime is an easy stall call to make. But when it's 4-4 and you have to make a stall call to determine a winner, I know it's book and you got to make it. That's still a hard call to make.
That's what I was asking.
Gentlemen, do you agree or disagree?
So one of the toughest calls, and you're completely right, is to actually call that stall call to send it into overtime, right? And then you never want to really award anything at overtime. You want to leave it in the kid's hands. But again, if it's there and it's without hesitation, you got to call.
Gotta call it.
Yeah. Now, here's another interesting. This one's often confused.
I thought he said he was going to get tough with us.
Well, no, it's going to get tough.
Yeah.
It's going to get tough. You guys keep talking shit. It's going to get tough.
Are you?
Yeah.
All right. Now, this happens all the time, right? This happens all the time. And this is the only time as a parent and as a former ref that I go, I cannot believe, so we're going to go over this. All right. Referee's position. Referee the whistle blows. Both guys stand up. Top man throws in a boot to cause a potentially dangerous situation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with that.
And the referee at that point gets a free. The offensive wrestler gets a freebie. It's a potentially dangerous call. The referee then tells the top man, "Don't do that again, or you're going to get called for stalling."
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy.
So
Give the kid the opportunity to know that the call is coming. Now, my technique as an official was to be very vocal so the coaches can hear what I'm saying also.
they know what's coming.
They know it's coming.
So
now
do
the
the
coach
wrestler.
heard it. So now you know what happens? The coach yells at his wrestler, "Don't do it again."
Yeah.
And sometimes people frown on that. They call that like coaching. I don't call it coaching. You know what I call it? Preventative officiating.
Yeah, and that's not coaching.
That's preventative
If
officiating.
you do that again.
Yeah, so that situation is clearly talked about in the case book, not the rules book.
Correct.
There's a whole half a page written on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Same goes into respect if the leg is already in on the mat and the defensive wrestler stands up and he makes it potentially. He's creating. So the way it's written in the case book, and this is exactly how it's written.
Pay attention.
Okay. This is exactly how it's written. The first one is a freebie, either for the offensive wrestler or the defensive wrestler. The next one, it says may be called for stalling. May. So you can say on the next time he does it, you can call him for stalling.
Yeah.
The third time it happens, it says must. That's how it's clearly written in the.
It's cut and dry.
Yeah.
It really
May the second time, must on the third time.
Then you can't, again, my own eyes, you cannot imagine how many times this call is butchered.
It is.
Oh, absolutely.
It is mainly when, and I think it's more common that the bottom guy stands up to create the stalemate and never, ever gets banged.
Did you
Never gets
Did
banged.
you see how it was butchered in a Pennsylvania State final 2 years ago?
What match?
A Pennsylvania State final match.
But do you know what match?
No,
No.
but the referee called the bottom wrestler
Right.
when the leg came in
Okay.
to decide a state final.
I saw that.
Yeah,
He called the bottom guy?
Yeah.
called the bottom guy. But
To lose the match.
the bottom guy stood up, and the offensive wrestler clearly put in the leg after the fact.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Well, we've covered that before.
yeah.
PA officials, whatever.
Oh, we're not going there. Yeah.
I remember that doc, the Paulsboro doc.
Yes.
And they were the ref was calling stalling in there.
Who's the ref for that match?
Was that you?
Yeah.
It was calling
More
stalling.
than likely it was him, yeah.
Was it you? Now it was calling stalling, but it was the
wasn't me.
guy was attacking, and it was a controversial stall call because they covered it in the doc.
It was the heavyweight match.
Yeah.
Curl, right?
Tom
Yeah.
Curl versus Steve Kempinski. Kempinski was a returning state finalist.
Curl was a stud.
Freshman.
Stud.
Freshman heavyweight.
Yeah.
And at one point, Kempinski needed a major for Phillipsburg to tie the match.
Curl was a freshman at the time?
Yes.
Oh, geez. Okay.
They needed a major. And the score, I think, was 20,
Where was this match at? Was it in the dungeon or the pit?
The
Okay.
pit.
All right.
The score was 27-23, I believe, going into heavyweight. We started at 103 back then, I believe. So Tom Curl knew he couldn't give a major up. Kempinski needed a major.
Yeah.
He needed a tech for
Situation.
the win,
Situational
for keeper or a
stalling.
pin. Nobody knew how good Tom Curl was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phillipsburg had no idea. They thought Kempinski, their stud, is wrestling a freshman.
Yeah.
They're going to pin him he's going to
A
pin him in the first
freshman
period.
stud.
Little did they know
Little
who
did
they
they
were
know.
dealing with. But getting back to the stalling part of that, I, as the official, felt strongly that Tom Curl, towards the end of the match, wanted to secure a regular decision. And I saw him backing up out of bounds. He was on his hands and knees, and Kempinski was like more or less on top of him, and Curl was backing out towards the out of bounds. And I called him for stalling. Very tough call.
Mm-hmm.
But in my heart, once again, I knew he was stalling. I felt strongly
Yeah.
he was stalling. And of course, that erupted the crowd. But I had a match in the pit one time,
You
and
got
it was
sweating.
I'm not sweating.
You needed to.
I don't sweat.
That was me.
I was a prolific stall caller in my own mind, I guess, but I was very consistent with it, and that was my claim to fame as a referee. I had a handle on how to call stalling. Coaches appreciated it, as far as I was concerned. But I had a match in the pit. It was Absagami versus Terrell Johnson was the boy's name from Peaburg. And I disqualified Terrell Johnson for stalling in the pit.
DQ'd him out.
And what the final call was, and Terrell Johnson was a very, very good wrestler. He placed in the States. He was an excellent wrestler. And the call that caused the disqualification was Terrell Johnson and the Absagami wrestler, I don't remember his name, went out of bounds. Terrell Johnson sat on his butt out of bounds for about 4 seconds. And I hit him for stalling to end the match. Because he didn't get up like you have to get back to the center.
He didn't engage.
Wow. Didn't engage. Yeah. You talk about and Absagami won in the pit because of it.
Big ones.
Well,
Big ones, man.
That,
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying
That's how you get to the top.
Takes a set to do that.
if you do it right,
district this year.
if you call stalling correctly, coaches respect you.
Yeah, 100%.
That's
And remember the last podcast we were on? I said to you, 1% to 2% of officials get respect after a career.
Yes.
Stalling will get you that respect. If you have the recognition and when and how to call it, that's what earns you that respect. That's one of the major components to earning respect.
Now, Gary, I love that story. Gary, how much time is devoted with your cadets on what we're talking about?
On stalling?
Yes.
We probably spend every class on stalling.
Okay.
Every class.
When do you feel it's comfortable for you to get into these dissecting moments of stalling? Do you ever even get to that point with cadets? Do you just let them fly the nest?
No, you've actually seen us. Doug's son used to come in and be one of the wrestlers at Rancocas Valley.
Oh.
And then I would tell the wrestlers, it was actually Mike Lamb's son and your son.
Years ago, yeah.
Yeah, and they would come in and I would tell those two, hey, we're going to do this situation. I want to see how the cadet, we would put the cadets live in a situation.
That's excellent.
Yeah. So we would put them in situations. We go over every one of these, the ones with the, you stand up, the leg going.
Right.
The backing out of bounds. Every stalling situation we go through.
But these rear standings, throwing in the boot or coming up with the boot in, this is ultimate ride out situations.
Yep.
This is how kids win and survive.
Yeah.
Most of them. They buy time. They buy 4 seconds. They buy 6 seconds. They buy 2 seconds.
So when you throw the ultimate in there, the ultimate changes.
Let's talk about that.
You get into it? Okay.
Hold on, before we go to that topic.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because you asked Gary how you teach the cadets about stalling and calling stalling. The clinic that I run at MetLife Stadium this past year was all stalling.
Great.
2 hours of stalling recognition and
we're every class.
Wow.
2 hours.
2 hours.
Wow.
And you know how they really know
200
when they're on the mats.
attended that.
I think a lot of guys missed it because that clinic, because I see this happen all the time. The bottom guy does not get banged. And I scream. I don't scream, but in my head, I'm like, that is stalling.
I could dispute that. He does scream, but that's all right.
No, but that's stalling. You've got to call that. You have to call that on the bottom guy. Yeah. But so getting back to now, this changes in. Now, let's not confuse everyone. There's sudden victory. Then there's tiebreaker 1, tiebreaker 2.
2 30-second tiebreakers.
Then sudden victory. This changes.
No.
Ultimate ride out. So this changes an ultimate ride out.
It's just called the ultimate. They don't call it a ride.
Whatever.
Out,
Explain.
Ultimate. Yeah.
Explain.
Yeah. So in the ultimate, it's a different situation. The book changes in the rule book.
Mm-hmm.
Now, New Jersey put into, is it 3 years now? With the drop down?
The new
with the count?
ultimate?
Yeah. So Gary Kessel, our rules interpreter in the state of New Jersey, put in for a, I guess you would call it like a mock or through something.
Trial.
A trial, exactly. To the NFHS.
A 1-year trial it was.
And then we were supposed to give them stats on it, but we're still using it 3 years later. I know that's how we're still calling it. So what we do in the ultimate is the first thing they do, we call that a stalemate. So for instance, if it's a head and arm without a leg in with a Merkel, that's not a recognized ride. So we are to stop and stalemate that right away. So if you wrestlers are listening and your coaches are listening, which they do, you should be able to teach your wrestler what to do in the ultimate. You know what I mean? To work around that. So first one, they want us to stalemate. The second time he goes to that in the state of New Jersey.
How long you letting that go, Gary?
Well, immediately when
immediate.
when I see that he's not using it. Okay. Now, recognize ride, if he puts in a head and arm and has the Merkle in with a leg.
That's a turn. He can turn him from there.
He can ride. He can stay on that for 30 seconds.
Okay.
He can put in legs for 30 seconds.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? We're not stopping that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? There is no stalling in that situation, right? Mm-hmm. You know, so recognize ride, good to go, right? But if they're not using a recognized ride and just saying a head and arm with no Merkle, if you see he's not using it, stop it and stalemate it. Right. And then from that point on, you let them know if you go to it again. In the state of New Jersey, we then go to a drop down count like they do at the NCAA level. And we do a 5-second count. And the reason Gary put that in is because now no one's surprised that the stall is called.
The coaches know it's coming. So
they see you counting. Once you get to the 5th, you stop it and you reward the stall. Right. So now there is the element of surprise is gone. And, you know, again, he's put that in. I can't vouch that it's done that way in every ultimate because some guys kind of mess it up a little bit. Yeah. But, you know, that's what New Jersey put in a few years ago. If it's a recognized ride, he's good to go for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? If it's not, it's a stalemate. And then from that point on, we do a drop down count and it's a stall. So say he's already had a warning and he's got a Merkle without a leg, stalemate. He goes to it again or anything else, it's a drop down count. And if we get to 5, it's a stall call, and he could lose the match.
Why do you think the rules are written to encourage stalling? Like if you've already surrendered 1 or 2 stalling points in the regular match, in the regular time, why are you then allowed to stall in the ultimate ride out? Why do you think the rules are created for that?
I couldn't tell you that. I have no answer.
Well, I just want your general opinion. Why do you think the rules...
That's above and beyond our...
But they keep you guys from... enforcing the integrity of the rule. I mean, the integrity of the rule is if you're stalling after you've already given up a point, the match should be over.
Not the ultimate.
It should be. It's part of the match.
The ultimate is a part of the match, but the ultimate has its own set of rules.
Yeah. It's stupid.
Their own set of rules.
Yeah.
And if a wrestling official called stalling according to the rule book, every wrestler would be disqualified.
Yeah,
fair enough. And it would never get to ultimate ride.
Yeah, according to the rule book.
I agree with you.
If you called it when the rule book says to call it, you would never get a match.
That brings up a good question then. How long, just on average, would you say, I know it's different for everyone, but for an official, like how long do you think it takes them to get comfortable with calling stalling the way they want to call it? Years, right?
Years.
It's worse than that.
Yeah.
Here's the reason. Because you're supposed to figure that out at the youth level. But you don't call stalling at the youth level. That's the problem. So you never get confidence to call it until you hit maybe the middle school level. And that's worse than youth wrestling half the time. So you're not really going to call stalling there. So when do you really start calling stalling? In your first few varsity matches?
There is a percentage of wrestling officials, and they can be 30-year veterans that will not call stalling. I've heard excuses, and it gets kind of bizarre to me at times. But I've heard excuses. They say, well, do you really think he wanted to stall?
Oh, well, goodness.
What does that mean?
Do you think he's out there to stall?
Yeah.
Yes.
I heard a coach say to me, one time I called his wrestler in the region semis, and he came up to me, the coach, after I called a stall call to put the match into overtime. He said to me, he goes, Vinny, my wrestler is an honor roll student. Do you think he wants to stall?
I have to do it. The price of sugar.
I said, I'm so proud of your kid. He was stalling. But a lot of officials don't call stalling. I mean, I don't know what gives them that right or prerogative not to call stalling. It's in the rule book, but they won't call stalling. You know, you see it. Some guys just won't call
Calling stalling in wrestling is like calling offensive holding in football. I mean, if you see it, you got to call it.
Correct.
I just find it funny because it's certain crowds with certain parents that we've dealt with throughout the year, and I don't even remember who to single out, but they're literally like the match will start. They're stalling, stalling.
Well, they're just trying to.
They all call.
Yeah.
Stall.
Listen, they want it.
Unless it's called against them.
Exactly.
They'll agree. I can sense an inexperienced official. Just as he walks in the gym, I can tell how experienced he is.
Yes.
I can. Just how he walks in.
Yeah.
He's a rookie. Or he's young.
Who he talks to. Inexperienced guys go right to their locker room. They're not talking to anybody.
They know. And then you know it's just a friend.
Here's a question for Vinny. Have you ever been accused of calling too much stalling?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Yeah.
In my career, if you're going to be consistent on the rule book, which I always was when I did call stalling, not to the extent the rule book wants you to call it, but I was always consistent. People want to fight over it. It causes a lot of emotion. That is a judgment call from the official, a true judgment call. And sometimes, people don't want judgment.
I'm speaking from experience on this. He gave me an assignment up in North Jersey 2 years ago. I'm not putting names in schools, and I'm not doing any of that stuff, right? So it's a good duel. He puts me on it, and the complaint was I called too much stalling. Okay. I went back and reviewed the whole thing because it was on television. There were 13 stall calls against one team and 13 stall calls against another team.
Then you shouldn't have called any.
I look at it like it's
13's less than one per bout.
It was consistent in every one of the situations. It was an easy one.
Right.
No return to the mat, backing out of bounds. I mean, they were just easy ones. And he got complaints that I called too much stalling.
Well, because your partner was not a prolific stall caller. And that's,
makes you look like you're gun trigger happy.
And and the other referee is not calling it, anywhere close to what Gary was calling. So that does create a large discrepancy.
He didn't officiate. He didn't blow the whistle.
Oh.
He only walked.
Oh, okay.
Well, Vin, let me ask you this, and I know you're gonna be honest. Let's say you're wrestling a varsity duel.
I'm reffing a varsity duel.
It's one team is 1-15, the other team is 1-15. They each have partial lineups. Are you calling stalling the same way?
Yes. I have to.
Just asking.
For me to be consistent, which that's where I want to be, I don't care about your records 1-15. It doesn't matter to me.
What I'm saying is, though, you have, I shouldn't say records, but what I mean is if it's a 1-15 team with 6 wrestlers.
28 inexperienced wrestlers.
Right. Okay. So what I mean is, so you physically call, in your head you're calling it, but you're physically calling stalling.
In those situations, what I do is this. When I know he's stalling, I count to 10 in my head. And if he's still in that same position, then I call it.
But in those situations,
it is different.
Yeah, I mean, when you have inexperienced wrestlers,
that's what I want.
There's no way you could be banging. You're not going to disqualify wrestlers. You want them to learn the sport.
You're honest.
I heard a coach tell me that for one of their inexperienced wrestlers, well, he's just a football player. Is what the coach said. And I was like, well, it's your job to coach him to be a wrestler. Be a wrestler like that. I shouldn't change what I want to stay consistent and call it, So, but, in those situations, I do understand what you're saying. It can be called a lot differently.
Let's get back on track here. Mr. Wade, let's get into stalling on the edge.
Edge. Okay.
Edge. Good topic here.
From neutral. Yeah. So this one is one that I think a high level official really recognizes. I see a lot at the high school level where they start in the middle of the mat and you'll see one wrestler back up to the edge and then turn around and try to shoot the kid out.
Mm-hmm. Now, Gary, it's the most common thing yelled at by a coach when the one wrestler's backing up to the edge. What's the coach yell? He's getting pushed out.
Yeah.
What I yell to the coach is, well, push back.
Yeah.
Or circle in.
Try to do something. Don't just...
Yeah, so I see that a lot where a guy backs up. Now, the onus on him is, the guy coming to him is taking all the risk.
Yeah.
He's taking all the risk. And you'll see coaches tell guys back up, they turn him around, then they shoot him out, right? I allow a guy to go to that edge 2 times. If he goes there again, he's getting banked.
The guy that's shooting.
Okay. Because he is backing up.
But if he backs up out of the circle, it's an instant stall call.
You'll see. You
don't give many opportunities.
We're going to get into that.
You won't
and fleeing. Yeah, we're going to get into that. Yeah. So, okay. So let's recognize edge stalling. So it's circling, shooting, acting like you're wrestling, acting like you're being aggressive.
It's all drama from the center.
Being conscious of the circle and utilizing it to where you're going to show the referee that I'm not stalling, I'm shooting. But the referee knows he's stalling because he's backing up to the edge of the circle, so he can't give up any points. Because if that other wrestler shoots on him, they're out of bounds. But if he shoots on the other guy, they're in bounds. So he has no risk. And he's creating that by backing up to the edge.
So the how you navigate through that is just start calling early and often.
Early set the tone, but here's when you set the tone. When you do pre-meet.
Well,
When you do a pre-meet
yes,
with the wrestlers.
I agree 100%.
You do a pre-meet.
but they're not
right?
listening to us.
Well, listen,
that.
at that point, though, you laid a foundation. You know,
Yeah, fair enough.
it used to say in the book when there's a center 10-foot circle, but they're gone now
Correct.
with the new mats, right? It says in the book, every wrestler must make every attempt to stay in the center of the mat. It used to say center of the 10-foot circle.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always say, if you don't stay in the center 10-foot circle, I know we're going hopefully to the outshot thing.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe not this.
not this one.
Yeah.
Okay,
maybe not.
gotcha.
But-
So I would
but say what you got to say.
I would lay the foundation right there with our pre-meet with the coaches and the wrestlers, how I call stalling, how it's going to go. And then from there, the tone is set.
Yeah.
Right. So if we start at heavyweight, I'm calling on the first match at heavyweight. So you set the tone for the rest of the duel. Right. Whatever match it is, you set the tone. Yeah.
You don't buy that, Doug?
Not when it comes to heavyweight. See, this is where I call this BS.
The rule book doesn't change from 106.
I know, but come on.
Same rule book.
Listen, that's a whole nother topic.
Okay. But
About
it's the
heavyweight stalling,
But you can agree it's the same.
those guys get away with murder.
But you can agree it's the same book.
Hold on,
right?
but it's literal discrimination. They can do whatever they want, but call that way in a 113-pound match.
They're not going to, nobody's going to call this.
But that's the bull,
Yeah,
the BS part of it.
it's discrimination.
Why are they allowed to do it?
That is discrimination.
You let
against
them?
heavyweight.
You let them?
I don't.
I let them. I'm not going to say
I don't let them. I'm just being
You
honest. with
do.
it. Yeah, I don't.
You do.
Yeah.
Because if honest to God, if you call the rule,
Doug, is he sweating? Yeah.
if he called stalling with heavyweights,
I'm
like you should,
There's plenty of
every
tape
box
out there.
score would
There's
have
plenty of tape
double
out there.
DQ.
We're good.
I call it a Dairy Queen. He'd have a DQ next to it. because
That's also the misnomer, though. Everyone says, like, because it's heavyweights. The rule book is from 106 to heavyweights, the same rule book.
That's what the rule says, Gary. We all know. Let's not BS each other.
Well, I'm not BSing.
You are.
I'm not
Heavyweights get away. And let's just call it 215s.
Mm-hmm.
They get away with murder. They're allowed to stall, and they get away with it.
Not that they're allowed to stall. I wouldn't use that term.
It's accepted.
But when you're 250 pounds or 270 pounds, it's hard to call them as much as a 113 pounder. It is discrimination. I agree.
Is it?
Well, from what my experience, a lot of heavyweights do not get called the same way as a 113.
Do not.
That's my experience.
And it's bullshit.
I would think over the years, though, the heavyweight division has changed
It has.
It's
tremendously.
getting more athletic.
You got
Yes, it is.
you got guys that are shooting
Yes.
double leg
They
takedowns
are.
and all that. That didn't happen when you were on the mat.
The
that's
last
for
few
sure.
heavyweight finals at the state tournament,
No.
you couldn't call
No,
stalling.
don't get me wrong.
They were wrestling.
Don't get me wrong.
They really were. They were
In
wrestling.
the NCAA finals, you'll see 133-pounders just hand fight and club each other
And
for
what are they
5
doing?
minutes. Right.
They're
So
still one.
I agree. So it's not just the big guys. But what I'm saying is the big guys, you walk into a gym, everyone expects it, and the referees tolerate it and allow it. And let's Gary, I will pull up YouTube
Mhm.
and I will put one of your matches
Go ahead.
and you officiating a heavyweight, and I will bet you a $10 gentleman bet your stall calls are non-existent.
Tonight when I go home, I'll pull up whatever you want to pull up. We're all good.
Gentleman bet.
Yeah, we're all good.
Gentleman bet.
We're gonna make one.
He's
So-
never bought a meal, so I
No,
don't agree.
he's loaded. Now, why should I know he's loaded? I'm not gonna.
You
buy
didn't even
meal.
bet a meal. $10 is nothing.
It's a hot dog at Costco.
So back, it's funny. Back to playing the edge. So
Is this him when you talk about playing the rough role with us? You ain't got rough yet.
well, now you're starting to lie and say you call heavyweights the same way. No, you don't.
Do we have
Fibbing.
the lie
Fibbing.
detector test here? We're good.
All right, so back to the edge. So it all comes back down to overpowering and outclassing is the same. So we're on the edge, and all my shots happen to be near the line, but I'm scoring. Am I still stalling? But I'm using the edge.
Which guy is scoring? The
Is
guy
your
with
back
his
to the line?
The guy with his back toward the center.
Mhm.
But he's
Right.
using the edge because let's face it, if you shoot out of bounds and score, there's less risk
Well,
there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So my question is though, since he's using the edge to secure his safe haven, is that stalling? Even though
Well, you
he's
have to
aggressive?
call him before he shoots. You have to be conscious of that. You see the guy backing up out of bounds. You don't wait till he hits the edge of the circle. You call him 3 feet before it.
No, the guy's shooting.
In what location?
What I mean is, if you and I are wrestling, because I see this a lot too, and it gets down to being aggressive and overpowering. If we're just casually wrestling, and all my shots seem to happen on the line, but I'm successful at it every time. You're going up here with 3 now. Am I stalling by using the edge as a comfort zone?
Are you going to your edge every time?
Why? No, let's just say...
You're talking about the guy with his back to the edge, correct?
No, I am talking about the guy who does all the scoring. Let's say whether my back is toward the center or toward the edge.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who is shooting
So
on
we're
the
away
edge,
from edge wrestling.
does the success rate of the takedown, does that determine if the guy is stalling or not? Because if you use the edge,
No, you can't. You
No.
can't do that.
No.
If he's shooting, you can't call
You can't.
for stalling.
Guys that
even though we know every time he shoots, it's going to be blown out of bounds.
I think we're talking
He's
about
using
two
the
different
But no, I'm
two different definitions with edge wrestling. Edge wrestling to me is a guy that wants to take wrestling to the edge.
to shoot, so there's less risk of funking or getting
The
countered.
situation you're
yes.
referring to is a guy is stalking
Yes,
and scoring takedowns at the edge.
opportunistic.
Yes.
Yes.
The guy that keeps going to the edge is the guy that should be called for stalling.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to clarify, you can be the aggressor and get hit with stalling.
Del Barton wrestled Bergen Catholic 1 versus 2 in the state, I'd say 3 years ago. 2 top quality guys, a returning state champ versus a kid who took, I believe, 2nd or 3rd. Score was maybe tied or 1-point match. And just what you're saying, the Bergen Catholic kid was pushing the Del Barton kid out of bounds 3 or 4 times in a row.
Mhm.
The referee called stalling. I thought he put the wrong fist up. Of course, I thought it was against.
Pushing is
I thought it was against Del Barton,
Yeah.
and he called a returning state champ from Bergen for stalling because he was pushing the kid out of bounds.
Was he pushing him?
It was a tough call.
Like
to be
straight
honest.
arm, like
Yeah.
Here's what
It
you
was
look
a-
for
you
with
know,
pushing. The straight arms, locked.
yeah.
And that's how Del Barton won the duel and #1 in the state because of that.
Yeah.
And, I was there sitting right next to the mat, and I was surprised. It wasn't a bad call, but it was a tough call.
Are you
Yeah.
trying to morph edge wrestling into what we're talking about now? Because that's not edge wrestling.
Well, no, hold on. But
That's stalling out of
You
bounds
got to remember,
wrestling.
the common viewer, the common
Yeah.
wrestling fan does not decipher the terminology that we use.
Yeah, I get
So
you.
I'm trying to make it as vanilla as possible for them.
But that's why we need to explain to them. They're two different. Edge wrestling and stalling out of bounds are two different.
Fair enough.
Two different.
Fair enough. What I mean is when stalling occurs near the line, near the edge, a lot of people don't understand why it's being called, the difference between fleeing and stalling. And, there is so much to go over.
Yeah.
And we can really dive deeper and deeper and deeper. But you got to remember, the common viewer cannot speak ref language.
Right. Well, no, that's not ref language. That's just knowing what wrestling is. There's edge wrestling.
But no,
There's
that's
stalling out of bounds wrestling.
That's ref.
That's ref. That's ref.
Yeah.
That's ref language. The average person does not know that.
Right. I get you.
I can promise you that.
Well, so now this is great. We can use this podcast
Correct.
to be able to
Correct.
Educate.
Educate.
Like, I know it now.
Yeah.
We assume
It's an education.
we assume they know.
Yeah.
They don't know.
And the back and the out of bounds stalling, which we refer to different than edge wrestling, is I'll push out, I'll back out. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So push out simple. You can see who's clearly dropping her hips, arms straight out,
Extended.
locked, extended, trying to push him out of bounds
Mhm.
to get the call.
Right.
Right.
And he's going to get called.
Now, different than a guy that wants to clearly just back out of bounds. Back out's going to be called at that point. I don't see a lot of push outs. Guys either know how to hide that or they don't know how to hide it. But if you're a good referee, you can see all those things. Does he drop his hips, trying to drive like a football guy? Arms extended. The other guy, I look at it like if you back straight out of bounds and you're perpendicular to the line, you're going to get hit for stalling.
Right.
If you're trying to get parallel with your butt to the line, we're hands off. We're hands off. At least that's kind of what we use. Parallel, perpendicular. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me.
You didn't have stalling out of bounds when you were on the
No.
mat. Yeah, you didn't. Yeah.
So explain to people the difference between a flea and a stall, and the reason why it's a huge difference.
So flea and stall is real simple. In a flea situation, there's got to be a scoring opportunity. If there's no scoring opportunity, he's not fleeing from being scored on.
Then it's a stall.
Okay.
So then it's a stall call. So that's the real simple. Is there a scoring situation? Whereas the guy maybe trying to gather both legs and the other guy jumps out of bounds? Yeah, he fleed the mat to get scored on for a takedown.
Could the perception ever be that a referee is calling a stall call instead of a flea because the stall call only comes with a warning, where a flea is an automatic point?
Absolutely.
Flea automatic point.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, as referees, do we have the discretion to say that's a fleeing point that could cost the match?
Doug,
Yes.
fleeing is very
It's a tough
rarely called.
I know.
It's a tough call.
For that reason?
Yes.
Right.
It's a tough call.
It is.
When you give points with your own discretion,
I know.
that's where criticism comes in on a referee. By the crowd, by the
It
coaches.
goes by the rule book again. We always say, how often do we go?
I will say this,
the
though. When you
rule book.
make that flea call, it's pretty obvious.
Correct.
And no one really complains about it because it's pretty
I
obvious.
don't think coaches, regardless of what the rule book states,
They-
I don't
they
think
understand
coaches
it.
don't
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing we talk about with cadets. I get a lot of cadets that come in that are coaches that want to be officials, and I blow their minds.
I know.
I blow their minds. And the next topic that hopefully we're getting to really blows their minds with near fall.
Hey, quick question. Besides our podcast, is there any other way that these coaches are getting educated on all
They're
this stuff?
invited to our clinics.
Okay.
The bad news is I get between 5 and 10 coaches. The state president this year, it's Steve Johnson from South Plainfield, is the state coaches president. He gets an email from me and a phone call to back it up, inviting to have him send out an email to every coach in New Jersey to attend the Rutgers Clinic or the MetLife Clinic. And I get between 5 and 10 coaches.
I know in South Jersey, too, they do conference.
You know how easy that
They
is
do
to just-
conference ones.
To say I'm going?
I would say it's a big deal, too.
It is a big deal. They can learn the rules.
Do you guys do conference ones? Like, for instance, the Colonial
do
Conference.
Oh,
no, Colonial Conference,
yeah,
they'll
we do.
send a guy.
We do.
Tri-County Conference.
Yes,
they'll send a
we
guy.
have that.
Cape Atlantic, they send.
Up in North
And
Jersey,
they
it's a
do
lot.
that. And most of the coaches come, you know.
Okay.
because-
That's
and
a region.
That's
up north
more
we do
to
a
teach
region
them the
meeting.
new rules that are brought out. But, you know.
But I give the coaches the opportunity to attend the clinics. And it's very disappointing because it's a really, really strong opportunity for them to, two things, create a camaraderie between
Yeah.
coach and official, which
need
is
that.
outstanding.
We need that, yeah.
We don't want to buck the coach. We want camaraderie with the coach. And it gives them the opportunity to learn the rules. And it's quite unfortunate when you see 5 guys show up. It's
So, Vin, do you think a stall call made that's not there is worse than a stall call not being made that's there?
the stall call made.
That's not there.
That's not there. And
It's worse when the referee does not call the call
Stalling that is there.
Yes,
Okay.
by far, because a lot of times the referee will shut down in the third period. Some referees gear up in the third period.
Yeah.
And they change their stall
That's
tactics.
not good either.
That's terrible.
That's
Yeah,
not
it's not
consistent.
They're not taught that way.
Yeah.
You call stalling the same in the first second to minute 5:59.
That's
It's the
crowd.
same-
That's crowd. Or bench.
Correct.
Yes. That's crowd or bench.
Yeah.
But the referee who does not make that call when it's 4-3, state quarter, state semis, and the guy shoots 6 times in a row and there's no call, that's not fair.
You see it a lot.
Yeah.
And you see it a lot.
It's, you know, to use a quick baseball analogy, Major League Baseball umpires, if they miss 5 calls in an entire game, they're top of their game. If a referee misses 1 call, wrestling referee misses 1 call, he sucks.
Yeah.
Plus, the benches
He sucks.
are right next to the mat for the
It's
teams.
crazy.
It's
The
into
stands
crazy.
are usually 4 feet from the mat. So you have fans sitting 4 feet from the mat. So when the kids go near the out of bounds there, you're 2 feet away from the ref.
But I still think a baseball umpire behind home plate has the hardest job of all officiating sports.
No,
I do.
I disagree.
I disagree too.
I watch my son play
wrestling-
baseball, and
As a man who umpires baseball, and
Yeah.
who umpires, I've
a
seen
tough gig, isn't
88
it?
miles an hour.
But here's where I
Calling
disagree.
wrestling's a lot harder. I
Here's-
think. Yes.
Here's where I disagree.
Yes.
How many umpires in Little League do you know their name?
Well, you're talking to me or him?
Forget your town.
Okay.
in Little League
go
or
to
in
a
major league.
None.
None.
Well, you knew the bad
People
ones.
know the wrestling
Yes.
official's name. They
You are
know where
correct.
they're from.
You are
They
correct.
know everything about that referee.
You are right.
We're different.
It's a brotherhood.
Yeah, we're different animals.
Correct.
It's a family. I mean, well, like our previous guests, 2 previous guests, they mentioned that their dads became friends because they wrestled their this guy's son.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the same thing. Like
Yeah.
we all know each other because
Correct.
yeah, it's just it's wrestling.
No one knows the football referee's
No.
name.
I agree with you.
What you're saying with that, I'll get social media friend requests from dads of kids that I officiate. I think that's amazing. I think it's cool. We're just a different animal. We really are. I don't want to say a cult. We're just a different culture. You know?
That's interesting though. That gap. though.
Borderline cult.
Yeah.
It is.
I just think the
borderline.
cult is a negative.
No,
yeah.
I'm using it in a
Culture.
positive
Yeah.
manner.
Oh, definitely.
It's a borderline cult. It's a positive cult. I'll tell you that.
Because if the coaches aren't as educated on what stalling calls are and stuff like that, obviously the kids aren't going to be as educated, and then the parents aren't going to be as educated, and that causes all from the
There are
downhill.
referees who aren't.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
What I admire a lot is there are, I would say there's 7 chapters of officials in New Jersey. And I would say in each chapter, there are 5 or 6, maybe more sometimes, coaches that become wrestling officials, but never refereed a match in their life.
They just come to learn.
Just to learn.
Yeah.
And that I admire a lot. That's the coach I want coaching me. Because now he knows the rules, number 1. Number 2, the referees see that coach at the meetings. They adhere to that. They admire that also. That creates a nice close knit between the coach and official.
It's respectable.
That coach is going to have a much better chance to talk to that official than a coach that doesn't show any appreciation towards a meeting or towards the rules.
Yeah, that makes
Vinny,
sense.
random question. I'm going to ask you both the same question. If you were king for the day, right? Would you make it a requirement?
You're a king every day.
Would you make it a requirement in order to become a high school head coach? You have to pass the same written test that a cadet referee has to pass.
Why not? They're coaching wrestling.
What do you think?
I would 1,000% agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stupid question. Why do you think no coach in any sport has to do that?
Here's when we're talking about this, what's coming to my mind. I think it's the sport culture in general.
Yeah.
If I played baseball, I know all the rules. If I wrestled, I know all the rules. No, you don't. You don't know all the rules until you buy a book and you read it from
Players
cover
are
to
famous
cover.
for
Is there some obscure rules?
Yeah, players are famous for that.
Yes.
Oh, I played this game 20 years.
And you'll see guys talk about that. Oh, I wrestled. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean you know the rules, right?
Yeah.
You might know some of the rules and a lot of the rules that make up the sport within itself. But once you get that case book and rules book, man, I'll tell you what, it blows your mind.
Yeah.
It blows your mind. There's a lot of things that go on there, you know. And you did that with football.
Correct.
Forget about like PSK and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
It makes my head spin. Yeah.
Yeah, it's relative. The rules are not, but the science is all relative. You know, study the case book, put time into craft, and officiate as often as possible and get better.
The best coach is
Ask
the
questions.
coach who a lot of coaches call me to purchase the case book and the rule book.
They should.
Yeah.
It's smart.
It is smart. And I've spoken to different region coach presidents, and I say to them, order them for your whole group.
Yeah.
If
They're
there's
cheap.
40 schools,
I know.
get 40 books.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they got to this day,
Especially the case book. If you're a coach, keep the rule book at home.
Case book's a hard one, man.
But that's the one I think a coach
That
should know.
That's the one, like when my cadets, we give them case book, rules book to start, right? And I tell them, don't even open this case book up until you become a full grasp of the rules book. Because that case book, man, is
It's detailed.
really,
It's
can
very
blow your mind.
Well, here's
You know.
here's my favorite one. Years ago, I was reffing. I'm not going to say the coach, but he was questioning one of my calls. And,
You're understanding now.
well, hold on. But this is what I mean. This is what I mean about the coach.
Somebody else has names and places.
Coach referee relationship, right? They come up to the table complaining about a call. The book says, I said, and this is what I said. Before you say the book says, do you want me to go by the book? Yes or no? This was my get out of, I give them the option. The book's the book. You get paid to go by the book. Okay, fine. You have dip in your mouth. That's flagrant misconduct.
Yeah.
You're ejected.
And
3 team points deducted.
yeah,
You want me to go by the book? About face, right back to the bench.
Right.
Question, stop. So that's kind of what I mean by the coach. They're so out of touch with the actual rules of wrestling that it's gotten to that point where because they're arguing about just stupid random stuff.
There are a lot of coaches though that do know the rules.
There's a lot. Yeah.
And
There's
they
some
know
very good ones.
when the referee misapplies a rule. There are a lot of them out there.
I was always confident enough to say, you want to talk the rule book? Let's talk it.
Well, that's
You know
one
what
thing
I
to
mean?
talk about with cautions. Like we call caution on every restart.
Oh, of course.
Every restart.
Yeah.
Right. But
That doesn't make you a good
It
referee.
doesn't make you a good referee, but I look at it, if that caution wasn't used to score off of it or to gain a complete advantage, then we're blowing the
Got
whistle.
nothing there.
Right?
Just get on.
And that's where we talked about last time where you use discretion. You know what I mean? That's, but cautions, we could call caution on every restart,
No, I got good news and I got bad news. What do you want to hear first?
Bad news is we're not getting a near fall.
Bad news, we're not getting in a near fall. And this is why. Because we got into stalling very deeply.
So
we're out of time?
We're going to have to do this again?
We're going to have
already out of time?
back.
We're over an hour.
No way.
Over an hour.
That was fast.
That was fast. But
Seriously?
That's the beauty of it. See, this is how we lure you two back.
I wanted to get near. I wanted to get a near
And you're guaranteed to show up for part 3.
Well,
Vinny brought something.
Just so you know.
Look what Vinny brought for it. He was
I
ready.
was told we're going to go over near full situations.
It's funny.
So I brought a protractor with me.
Don't talk about the degrees yet.
Just to
Just
get into
Just show them. Wait up. Just show them the protractor. That's all we need.
Bring that next
for next time.
Bring that next time. Now, guys, like I said, we can talk about this stuff. We could talk about this stuff for hours.
Yeah.
Every little detail for hours. Time flies.
And how excited are we in June talking about it? It's amazing.
One last point I'll make in stalling.
Of course.
In the state locker room, when the referees are in the locker room ready to go out to officiate the state matches, the referees are told by me that the evaluators, which I have about 8 guys every year down there, the evaluators are looking at who recognizes how to call stalling. And the new rule being pushed out of bounds or backing up, whatever you want to call it, when the one wrestler goes out of bounds from neutral, I said the referee who doesn't call that is not going to be invited back next year.
Yeah.
That's how cut and dry I am with it. There's no secrets, because if you can't recognize and call that, how are you going to recognize top and bottom stalling?
I agree.
And they know it before they go out. And the evaluators all know that's what they look for. Last year, we had 4 officials not get invited back to the state tournament because they didn't recognize backing up out of bounds.
Wow.
I like it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It keeps the referees consistent.
I agree.
Yes, it
and it
does.
keeps them accountable. Accountable is more important than anything else, man.
Without a doubt.
You know, this is not a privilege. I mean, no, this is not a right to be here to ref.
It's
this
a
is a privilege to be
Privilege,
here to ref. Yeah, and some guys have the attitude, not all, some have the attitude, but, I'm going to be here no matter what.
No,
Not the case.
that doesn't work that
I
way.
hear you. Remember the last segment? The amount of booze in the arena, man, that place was a hornet's nest.
And you and I laughed, looked at each other and laughed.
But it's so true. You walk into a boardwalk hall at a random time in the middle of the 138, and that place would be just booze constantly. He's right.
Was.
Yeah, he's right.
It was. It really was.
It was craziness.
And the referees didn't have numbers in their back then either, so you didn't know who the referee was.
It's gotten better.
Yeah,
It's definitely
We
gotten
have gotten better, that's for sure.
better.
Yeah.
Wade,
Appreciate you, brother.
Mr. Russo.
Thank
Thank
you.
Yeah, man.
Pleasure.
Pete,
Pleasure. Always, man.
Pete was nice and quiet, man.
Hey,
excellent.
look out for
I was learning. I'm learning
Look out for
today.
part 3 here with the whistle. This is a great segment. It's
That's
one of
right.
my favorite segments to do.
Get ready for the protractor.
Yeah,
That's it. It's been another episode of New Jersey Match Chat. Check back for episode 3 to talk about near fall and find out more about this protractor. Attention, wrestling fans, parents, and future state champs. This is your podcast. We're shining a light on the toughest high school New Jersey wrestlers and coaches who are building warriors one takedown at a time. Follow us, like, and subscribe on your favorite platform. Doesn't cost you anything, but it goes a long way to support the show. Don't just watch the journey, be part of it.